I am Frank, a 72-year-old widower from the windy streets of Chicago. My days had settled into a quiet routine after losing my wife 5 years ago, managing my real estate business, tending to the small garden in my backyard, and cherishing the time with my daughter Emily and granddaughter Lily. Emily, at 42, had always been the ambitious one, building her own life while raising Lily alone after her divorce. We talked often, and she invited me for dinner every couple of weeks to keep the family bond strong. That evening, as I pulled up to her suburban home in my old sedan, I felt the usual mix of anticipation and warmth. But then my phone rang. It was Emily, her voice strained over the line. "Dad, I'm sorry, but I have to cancel tonight. I came down with something sudden, maybe the flu. Lily's with me, so don't worry. We'll reschedule soon." She sounded genuinely unwell, coughing lightly, and I bought it without question. Still, concern gnawed at me. Lily was only 8, and Emily had been working long hours at her marketing job. What if they needed something? I had kept my spare key from the days when I helped with renovations, and I decided to check in quietly, just to drop off some soup from the deli nearby. The front door was unlocked, which struck me as odd for Emily's cautious nature. I slipped inside, the familiar scent of her lavender candles hitting me first. The house was dimly lit, coats draped over the entryway chair, and a half-eaten sandwich on the kitchen counter suggested they had been home all day. I called out softly, "Emily? Lily? It's Dad." No answer. Moving toward the living room, I heard muffled voices, Emily's low tone and then Lily's higher, innocent one. My heart quickened, maybe she was worse off than she let on. I paused behind the swinging kitchen door, not wanting to startle them if they were resting. That's when Lily's words cut through the air like a knife. She was on the cordless phone in the hallway, her small voice clear and affectionate. "Dad, Mom says you're coming over soon. Can we play the board game tonight?" A pause, then laughter. "Okay, Dad. Love you." She hung up and scampered back to Emily, but the damage was done. The man on the other end wasn't me. A quick glance at the caller ID on the phone base confirmed it, Mark. I knew that name, Lily's psychotherapist, the one Emily had mentioned hiring after Lily's school troubles last year. He was supposed to be a professional, a helper, not this. Hearing my granddaughter call another man Dad shattered something inside me. It wasn't just confusion, it felt like the foundation of our family was cracking. I backed away silently, my mind racing. Emily emerged from the living room then, spotting me in the kitchen doorway. Her eyes widened in surprise, but she recovered quickly. "Dad? What are you doing here?" I forced a smile, hiding the turmoil. "Just checking on you, like I said. Brought soup." But as I handed it over, the shock lingered. Something was deeply wrong, and I had to uncover it before it tore us apart further. My heart pounded as I stood there in Emily's kitchen, the soup container still warm in my hands. Emily's surprise at seeing me had faded into a forced smile, but I could see the flicker of unease in her eyes. Lily bounced in from the hallway, oblivious to the tension, and hugged my legs. "Grandpa. You came anyway? Mom's not really sick, she just had a headache." Emily shot her a quick look, but Lily chattered on about her day at school, showing me a drawing she'd made of our family, me, her, and Emily, with a big house in the background. It was all so normal, yet the word Dad echoed in my mind like a warning bell. I played along, complimenting the drawing and asking about her therapy sessions with Mark, keeping my tone light. Emily jumped in, saying how helpful he had been with Lily's anxiety after the divorce. "He's like family now," she added casually, but her words landed heavy. I nodded, excused myself to use the bathroom, and slipped away to gather my thoughts. The house felt smaller, the walls closing in with secrets I wasn't meant to hear. Once out of sight, I didn't head to the bathroom. Instead, I eased toward the stairs, my old knees creaking softly on the carpeted steps. Emily's home office was at the top, door slightly ajar, a habit from when she worked late nights. I knew I was crossing a line, invading her privacy, but that phone call had ignited a fire of doubt. What if Mark wasn't just a therapist? What if there was more to this family talk? I pushed the door open just enough to slip inside, closing it behind me with a quiet click. The room was tidy, papers stacked on the desk, a laptop humming softly in sleep mode. I wasn't tech-savvy, but I'd seen enough in my business dealings to know where to look. Rifling through the drawers carefully, I found nothing at first, just bills, Lily's school reports, and marketing proposals from Emily's job. Then, in a locked folder under the desk, I spotted a file labeled Personal Matters. My hands trembled as I pried it open with a paperclip, the way I'd learned from a shady tenant years ago. Inside were printouts of medical forms, emails, and notes in Emily's handwriting. My name was everywhere: Frank Harlan, age 72, owner of Harlan Realty, a modest but steady business I'd built from nothing after immigrating from Ireland in my 20s. The emails were between Emily and Mark, dated back 6 months. "We need to move fast," one read from Emily. "Dad's getting forgetful, mixing up client names, missing meetings. If we can get the competency evaluation, the courts will side with us." Attached was a draft report from Mark, stamped with his psychotherapist letterhead. It described me as cognitively impaired, prone to delusional thinking, and unfit to manage assets. Delusional? I just closed a deal on a downtown property last week, sharp as ever. Mark's signature was forged in places, or at least it looked that way, his professional credentials twisted to paint me as a doddering old man. The plan was clear: declare me incompetent, appoint Emily as guardian, and transfer control of my real estate holdings to her. The business wasn't a fortune, but it generated solid income, properties in Chicago's growing suburbs, a few commercial rentals. Enough to change lives, or ruin them. I sat back in her chair, the weight of it sinking in. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment betrayal, it was a calculated conspiracy. Emily, my only child, the girl I'd raised alone after her mother left us for a fleeting affair, now plotting against me. And Mark, the so-called professional, enabling it all for what? I scanned further and found bank statements, transfers from Emily to him, labeled consulting fees. He wasn't just involved, he was profiting. Lily calling him Dad suddenly made sense, not some innocent slip, but part of their facade, grooming her into this new family while they schemed to strip me bare. I thought of all the times I'd been cautious in business, double-checking contracts, watching for partners who might undercut me. I'd installed security cameras in my office, vetted every deal. But family? I'd never armored myself against that. Emily had always been the apple of my eye, college tuition paid, her wedding funded, even helping with Lily after the divorce. I'd assumed our bond was unbreakable, forged in shared grief over her mother's abandonment. How wrong I'd been. The preparation for betrayal had come from the wrong direction entirely. It wasn't outsiders I needed to fear, it was the ones closest, the ones I'd trusted without question. Voices drifted up from downstairs, Emily on the phone now, her tone shifting to businesslike. "Mark, he's here unexpectedly, but it works in our favor. I can observe him tonight, note any episodes for your report." My blood ran cold. I couldn't confront them, not yet. Anger surged, but so did clarity. If I stormed down, they'd deny it, spin it as my delusions, and accelerate their plan. No, I needed evidence, allies, a way out. I snapped photos of the key documents with my phone, clumsy, but it would do, then replaced everything exactly as found. Slipping back downstairs, I forced normalcy, suggesting we order pizza instead of cooking. Lily cheered, Emily hesitated but agreed. Over dinner, I watched them. Mark arrived 20 minutes later, just checking in, with a bottle of wine and easy smiles. Lily ran to him, calling him by name this time, but the affection was there. Emily touched his arm lightly, their glances loaded. I played the doting grandfather, asking about Lily's progress, all while my mind mapped the counterstrike. That night, driving home through Chicago's neon-lit streets, I called my old friend Tom Riley, my lawyer since the '80s. "Tom, it's Frank. I need your help, something's rotten with Emily." He listened without interruption as I laid it out. By dawn, we had a plan brewing, one that would turn their greed against them. Betrayal cuts deep, but survival demands cunning. The drive home that night felt endless, Chicago's streetlights blurring into streaks as my mind replayed every damning detail from Emily's office. Betrayal from my own daughter, it was like a tumor I'd never seen growing, now metastasizing to threaten everything I'd built. Tom Riley's voice on the phone had been steady, the kind of calm that comes from decades of handling crises in the courts. "Frank, don't do anything rash. Meet me at my office first thing tomorrow. We'll document this, protect you, and flip the script." I trusted Tom. He'd been my lawyer since I started Harlan Realty in the gritty '70s, guiding me through zoning battles and bad deals. By the time I pulled into my driveway, the anger had cooled into resolve. No shouting matches or tearful accusations, that would only give them ammunition to call me unstable. Instead, we'd outmaneuver them, quietly and legally, turning their conspiracy into their undoing. The next morning, I arrived at Tom's downtown office with the photos from my phone printed out, plus a USB drive of copies. His secretary ushered me in, and Tom greeted me with a firm handshake, his glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed the stack. "This is ironclad, Frank," he said after an hour of poring over the falsified reports and emails. "Mark's tampering with medical ethics, and Emily's complicity could lead to fraud charges. But we don't want a messy trial that drains you. What's your goal, preserve the business, or something more personal?" I leaned back in the leather chair, staring at the skyline through his window. The business was my life's work, 15 properties, from apartment blocks in Pilsen to a strip mall on the north side, generating enough to keep me comfortable and fund scholarships in my late wife's name. But now, it symbolized the trust they'd shattered. "Protect it from them," I replied. "And make sure they can't touch it. If they push, let them hit a wall." Tom nodded, sketching out options on a legal pad. We discussed competency evaluations, getting one from a reputable doctor to counter Mark's lies, and asset protection trusts. But then I had an idea, born from years of watching charities outlast greedy developers. What if I transfer everything to a foundation? In honor of Sarah. My wife had always dreamed of helping families like ours, immigrants starting over. Tom raised an eyebrow but saw the genius. "It's drastic, but bulletproof. Sell to the foundation at market value minus a discount for speed, irrevocable. By the time they file, there's nothing left to inherit." We moved fast. Over the next 2 weeks, I kept up appearances, calling Emily daily to check on Lily, even sending her a get-well basket to sell the concerned father role. Inside, I was a ghost in my own life, signing papers in Tom's office while avoiding the office at Harlan Realty to dodge any slip-ups. The sales went smoothly. I undervalued the property slightly to expedite closing, say, 20% off, to a shell company Tom set up, wholly owned by the Sarah Harlan Foundation for Family Renewal. It would focus on affordable housing and counseling for at-risk kids, a living tribute. Buyers lined up, eager for the deal, and escrow cleared in record time. My accountant, another old ally, handled the taxes cleanly, ensuring no red flags. By the end of the month, my net worth on paper had shifted, personal assets minimal, business dissolved into the nonprofit. I kept a modest pension and our old family home, enough for a simple life. Tom filed the dissolution papers quietly, and we waited. Emily and Mark struck sooner than expected. A process server showed up at my door one crisp October morning, handing me court summons for a guardianship hearing. The petition painted me as frail, citing incidents like forgetting birthdays, lies, all of it, and attached Mark's report, now formalized with his credentials. Emily's signature was there, bold and unapologetic, claiming it was for my safety. I read it in my kitchen, the words blurring for a moment, not from age but from the sting. Lily's future, twisted into their tool. But I didn't panic. Tom was already in motion, filing our response with the real medical eval, clear cognition, no impairments, and evidence of the conspiracy, the emails, forged signatures, even a subpoena for Mark's financials showing those fees as kickbacks. The judge, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, scheduled an emergency hearing. I testified calmly, handing over the documents, while Emily squirmed on the stand, her story unraveling under cross-examination. It was concern, not control, she insisted, but the bank transfers told another tale. Mark, called as an expert witness, crumbled when Tom presented the originals of his report, discrepancies in dates, altered diagnoses. Professional error, he stammered, but the ethics board was already alerted. The consequences unfolded like dominoes. The judge dismissed the petition outright, calling it a blatant abuse of process. She referred Mark to the state licensing board for investigation, stripping his provisional license pending review, unethical conduct, falsifying records for personal gain. He left the courtroom pale, his career in tatters. Emily faced worse. The court ordered her to pay my legal fees, a hefty sum that wiped out her savings. Word spread in our circles, Chicago's tight-knit real estate community, and her marketing job evaporated when clients learned of the scandal. Public shame hit hard, neighbors whispered, Lily's school sent notes home about family matters. Emily called me that night, voice breaking. "Dad, this can't be happening. We just wanted to help." But I hung up, letting silence be my answer. No violence, no raised voices, just the cold finality of actions meeting repercussions. The foundation launched its first project weeks later, renovating a shelter for single parents, funded by what was once my empire. Sarah would have smiled at that. In the quiet aftermath, I reflected on the cost. I'd lost a daughter, not to death but to her choices, and Lily, sweet Lily, became collateral, shuttled between daycare and Emily's dwindling world. But peace came in knowing I'd safeguarded the legacy. Betrayal had forced my hand, but it also freed me to build something enduring. The courtroom victory felt hollow in the weeks that followed, like winning a battle only to survey the scorched earth left behind. Chicago's autumn winds whipped through the streets, carrying fallen leaves that mirrored the fragments of my family life scattering in the breeze. I kept to my routine, morning coffee at the corner diner, afternoons reviewing foundation reports from Tom's office, but the house felt emptier than ever. Lily's drawings, once pinned to the fridge, now gathered dust in a drawer. Emily's calls stopped after that desperate plea the night of the hearing. I didn't block her, but the silence suited me. Public shame had done its work. Articles in the local paper hinted at the scandal without naming names, but our community was small enough for whispers to fill in the blanks. Mark vanished from the scene, his practice shuttered, last I heard relocating to a smaller town to start over. Emily, though, bore the brunt. Her job gone, she sold the suburban house at a loss to cover debts, moving into a cramped apartment on the south side. Lily switched schools, and reports from mutual friends painted a picture of struggle, late bills, Emily picking up odd jobs as a freelance writer, the weight of regret etching lines on her face. I threw myself into the foundation's work to fill the void. The Sarah Harlan Foundation for Family Renewal had hit the ground running, using the proceeds from my old properties to fund its first initiatives. We partnered with a local shelter, renovating units for single mothers and their children. Providing not just housing but counseling sessions, ironic, given Mark's downfall. I visited the site one chilly November day, watching contractors install fresh paint and safe playground equipment. The director, a warm woman named Carla who'd lost her own husband young, showed me around. "This will change lives, Frank. Sarah would be proud." Her words stirred something soft in me, a reminder that legacy wasn't just about bloodlines but about choices that rippled outward. Still, at night, alone in the house Sarah and I had shared for 40 years, doubts crept in. Had I been too harsh? Emily was my daughter, flawed as she was, raised in the shadow of her mother's abandonment. I'd given her everything, opportunities one never had as an immigrant kid scraping by in Belfast before coming to America. But greed had twisted her, and trust, once broken, didn't mend easily. It was a year to the day after the hearing when the letter arrived. I just returned from a foundation board meeting, the envelope waiting on my doormat with Emily's handwriting, familiar, looping letters from her schoolgirl days. I hesitated in the hallway, coat still on, the weight of it pulling at me. Part of me wanted to tear it open, another wanted to burn it unread. Finally, I sat at the kitchen table, the same one where we'd shared countless meals, and slid it carefully. The paper was plain, the words typed but signed by hand, as if she couldn't bear to write them out fully. "Dad," it began. "I know this letter might mean nothing to you now, after everything. A year has passed since that awful day in court, and I've had time to reflect on the wreckage I've caused. Losing the house, the job, even Lily's stability, it's all on me. Mark is gone, his betrayal cut deep, but I see now how I enabled it, how my ambition blinded me to right and wrong. I thought I was securing our future, protecting Lily from what I saw as your decline. But it was greed, plain and simple, dressed up as concern. You've built something beautiful with the foundation, helping families like mine once was. I read about it in the paper, and it shames me further. I don't write asking for money or a second chance at your assets, those are gone, rightfully so. I just need you to know I'm sorry. Truly, deeply repentant. Lily asks about you sometimes, and I tell her you're doing important work. If there's any peace in forgiveness, even partial, I hope you find it. But if not, I understand. With regret, Emily." I read it twice, then 3 times, the words blurring not from tears but from the raw honesty in them. No excuses, no pleas for reconciliation, just acknowledgement. It was more than I'd expected from the woman who'd plotted my downfall. Lily's mention tugged hardest. My granddaughter, caught in the crossfire, deserved better than this fractured legacy. I walked to Sarah's old desk in the study, pulling out stationery we'd bought on a trip to Ireland. My reply took hours to compose, hands steady but heart heavy. I kept it brief, as words alone couldn't bridge the chasm. "Emily," I wrote. "Your letter arrived today. I've read it and considered your words. Repentance is a start, and I accept your apology for what it's worth. But trust is like a demolished home, walls crumbled, foundation cracked. It cannot be rebuilt with words alone, it requires time, actions, and proof of change. The foundation thrives, carrying Sarah's memory forward. Lily is innocent in this. If you allow, I'd like updates on her well-being, nothing more. Take care of yourself. Frank." I sealed it and dropped it in the mailbox that evening, the act feeling like closing a chapter without fully ending the book. Partial forgiveness, that's what it was. Not absolution, not reunion, but a crack in the door for possibility. Days later, a photo arrived, Lily at her new school, smiling with a gap-toothed grin, a note from Emily, "She's doing well. Thank you." No demands, just that simple gesture. It softened the edges of my isolation, reminding me that family ties, though strained, didn't sever completely. In the months after, life shifted subtly. I attended the Foundation's first gala, a modest event at a community hall, where donors toasted the shelter's opening. Carla introduced me to volunteers, people from all walks, teachers, retirees, young parents, who shared stories of their own hardships overcome. One man, Javier, a widower like me, spoke of rebuilding after loss. "Family isn't always blood," he said. "Sometimes it's the ones who choose to stay." His words echoed as I thought of Emily's letter, the partial bridge it offered. I didn't reach out beyond the occasional card to Lily, but the repentance lingered, a seed planted in unlikely soil. Chicago's winters came and went, harsh but familiar, and with spring, I began planning a trip west, not to escape, but to explore new horizons. Forgiveness, partial as it was, freed a piece of me to move forward, even if the full reconstruction would take years. The decision to leave Chicago came gradually, like the slow thaw of a Midwestern winter. After Emily's letter and my measured reply, a restlessness settled over me that no amount of foundation work could fully quell. The city, with its towering skyscrapers and endless hustle, had been my home for over 50 years, where I'd met Sarah at a neighborhood dance, built Harlan Realty from a single rental unit, and raised Emily through scraped knees and school plays. But now, it felt like a museum of memories, each corner whispering of betrayals and what-ifs. The Sarah Harlan Foundation for Family Renewal was thriving without me micromanaging. Carla and the board had taken the reins, expanding to 2 more shelters and a scholarship program for immigrant families. I'd visit quarterly, but day to day, I craved a fresh start. Arizona called to me after a chance conversation with Javier at the gala. He spoke of Sedona's red rocks and quiet communities, a place where retirees like us found purpose without the weight of past storms. "Go see the sunsets," he said. "They heal what words can't." I booked a flight on a whim, and after a week of hiking dusty trails and chatting with locals, I knew it was time. Selling the family home was bittersweet. Tom handled the details, donating proceeds to the foundation, but by early summer, I was packed into a modest SUV, driving southwest with a U-Haul trailer trailing behind. The small town of Cottonwood, Arizona, welcomed me with open arms and relentless sunshine. Nestled in the Verde Valley, it was a far cry from Chicago's clamor, population under 6,000, Main Street lined with adobe shops and a community center that doubled as the town's heartbeat. I rented a single-story bungalow on the outskirts, white stucco walls and a porch overlooking cactus-dotted hills. No more shoveling snow or dodging traffic. Mornings brought birdsong and the scent of mesquite. Unpacking took days, Sarah's photo albums on the shelves, Lily's old drawings framed in the hall, but I kept it simple, no room for clutter or ghosts. The real shift came when I wandered into the local community center on my second week. It was a hub for everything: senior yoga, food drives, youth programs. The director, Maria, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with a Mexican-American heritage, spotted me lingering by the bulletin board. "New in town?" "Looking to volunteer?" she asked, handing me a flyer for their after-school mentoring. I nodded, explaining my background briefly. No need to delve into the drama. "I've got time and experience helping families," I said. She signed me up on the spot, and just like that, I had a schedule. Volunteering became my anchor. Mondays and Wednesdays, I mentored kids in the literacy program, reading stories to third graders who reminded me of Lily, wide-eyed, full of questions. One boy, Miguel, struggled with English after his family moved from Sonora. We worked on phonics, and seeing his confidence grow felt like reclaiming a piece of purpose. Thursdays were for the senior lunch club, where I'd share tales of Chicago real estate over plates of enchiladas, trading laughs about urban mishaps. The group adopted me quickly: Ed, a former teacher with a dry wit, Rosa, a widow who'd lost her husband to illness, and a rotating cast of others who valued stories over status. They didn't pry into my past, but when I mentioned the foundation, eyes lit up. "That's real impact," Ed said one afternoon. "Not like us old folks just killing time." I shook my head. "We're all building something here." In those interactions, I found a new family, not bound by blood or expectation, but by choice and mutual respect. They saw me as Frank the mentor, Frank the storyteller, not the widower who'd been betrayed. No one cared about my bank account or business acumen. They appreciated the man who'd drive an hour to pick up donations or stay late to fix a leaky roof at the center. The foundation's work amplified this sense of renewal. Back in Chicago, the assets I'd transferred, once my real estate empire, now fueled tangible change. Quarterly reports arrived like gifts. The first shelter housed 20 families, providing stability for mothers escaping tough situations, much like Sarah had envisioned. One newsletter detailed a scholarship recipient, a young girl from a border town pursuing nursing, her essay thanking anonymous donors who believed in second chances. It hit close. If Emily had chosen differently, Lily might have been in a similar program. I forwarded updates to Emily occasionally, with notes about Lily's well-being, photos of her soccer games, report cards showing straight A's. Our correspondence stayed sparse, a bridge of civility rather than warmth. She responded with thanks, mentioning her new job at a non-profit, counseling at-risk youth. Learning from my mistakes, she wrote once. Partial forgiveness had evolved into cautious distance, enough to keep the door ajar for Lily, who sent drawings of Arizona sunsets after I described them. No grand reunions, but a quiet acknowledgement that time mends what anger can't. As months turned to a year in Cottonwood, peace settled deep in my bones. I took up hiking the Verde River trails, the rush of water over rocks a balm for old wounds. Community events wove me in further, the annual chili cook-off, where my Irish stew recipe surprised everyone, or holiday drives collecting toys for the center's families. Sarah's legacy shone brightest through it all, the foundation saving lives, one home, one scholarship at a time. What was once a tool for Emily's greed now empowered strangers, turning betrayal into benevolence. I'd sit on my porch at dusk, watching the sky blaze orange and purple, and feel gratitude. At 73, I'd lost a daughter to her choices but gained a world of connections that valued my essence. Chicago was a chapter closed, Arizona, this new life, was the epilogue I hadn't expected. Legacy isn't hoarded wealth or unbroken family ties, it's the ripples you leave, helping others rise when you've been pulled under. In that ultimate peace of mind, I finally let go.